when resistance becomes a burden. Change often feels like an unwanted visitor. We brace against it and call this strength, yet the strain builds quietly. Many people try to outmuscle uncertainty even when the effort exhausts them. They believe stillness is power and movement is danger. Yet this belief traps them in patterns that deny how life unfolds. Notice how a forest floor shifts through subtle changes in soil composition. Nothing forces the soil to stay as it once was. It adjusts, it blends, it releases what no longer serves its growth. This quiet transformation mirrors the truth Alan Watts described. When we resist change, we treat life as something to be controlled rather than joined. The more we tighten around fixed expectations, the heavier our inner load becomes. In this opening part, we begin the journey from strain toward ease by seeing how resistance drains us far more than change itself. The illusion of holding firm. We are often praised for refusing to bend. People admire grit and admire those who push through difficulty with sheer determination. Yet few notice the toll it takes when someone must always remain unmoved. This stance is built on the belief that force keeps us safe. But as Alan Watts suggested, the attempt to stay fixed becomes the very source of internal friction. Consider how a young forest shoot adjusts to shifts in surrounding canopy density. As light patterns change, the shoot moves toward what allows continued growth. It does not insist that the canopy remain as it once was. In this simple adaptation lies a deep teaching. Strength emerges not from fixation, but from responsiveness. When we hold ourselves in rigid positions, we block the natural rhythm of life. This block becomes tension, and tension becomes suffering. By questioning the reflex to stay firm, we create space for clarity. The cost of fighting what already is. Many people carry unspoken exhaustion from battling circumstances that have already moved on. A relationship ends, a career shifts, a long-held plan dissolves. The mind protests. It insists the situation return to what felt familiar, yet the moment has already changed. This is why clinging hurts. The effort tries to freeze what cannot be held still. Imagine a patch of moss adjusting its moisture levels after canopy shade increases. It does not attempt to restore the old conditions, it simply aligns with what is present. This alignment reduces strain and allows continued growth. When we refuse such alignment in our own life, we absorb the full weight of resistance. Watts warned that resisting change is like refusing to breathe. The strain becomes self-inflicted. Recognizing this pattern is the first doorway to release. If these ideas support your journey, consider joining the community by subscribing. It helps you stay connected to future reflections. The turning point in awareness. The shift begins when we see resistance clearly. We notice how often we tighten around outcomes or identities. We see how much energy we spend trying to maintain a version of life that no longer matches reality. This recognition is not defeat, it is the beginning of wisdom. Watts pointed toward an alternative, allowing change rather than wrestling with it. Think of how mineral layers beneath the forest slowly reorganize after rainfall alters their composition. There is no struggle, only natural adjustment. This reveals a powerful truth. Adaptation is not weakness, it is alignment with reality as it unfolds. Once we see this, pressure begins to dissolve. We stop believing that effort must always increase. We stop assuming that straining harder is the only path. The mind starts to loosen its grip when letting go feels unsafe. Letting go can feel like stepping into uncertainty without support. People cling not because they enjoy tension, but because release feels dangerous. The ego fears dissolution, so it insists that safety exists only in control. Yet this belief hides a deeper truth. Trying to prevent change is what creates instability. Imagine the gradual cooling of forest ground after seasonal transitions. The soil accepts temperature shifts without fear. This quiet acceptance demonstrates that stability is not found in stasis. It emerges through cooperation with natural cycles. When we allow life to change, we move with it rather than against it. The fear of release softens when we see that flow is not chaos. It is how reality operates. The wisdom of Watts encourages trust in this rhythm. The ego's need for certainty. Much of our resistance comes from defending a rigid sense of self. We cling to identities built over years. We fear that if circumstances shift, the self we know may fade. Yet identity is not a fixed object. It is a process. Watts emphasized this repeatedly. Our sense of I evolves in response to life, not in isolation from it. Think of how root networks expand toward new pockets of nutrients in the soil. They do not insist on remaining in old patterns. The adjustment is natural, continual, and unforced. When we see our own identity in this way, change becomes less threatening. We recognize that adaptation does not erase us, it deepens us. It widens our capacity for experience. This perspective dissolves the ego's panic around uncertainty. Understanding impermanence. Impermanence is often spoken of as a philosophical idea, yet living it is another matter. Intellectually, we know everything changes, but emotionally, we hope our preferred conditions remain untouched. Watts reminded us that suffering comes from resisting this truth. Imagine the slow breakdown of leaf litter as it returns nutrients to the soil. Nothing resists this process. Nothing complains that it is losing its past form. Transformation is part of its purpose. When we see ourselves within the same natural rhythm, impermanence becomes less threatening. Instead of clinging, we learn to meet each moment with openness. The more we embrace this truth, the lighter we become. Life stops feeling like an opponent and begins to feel like a partner. Why forcing never works. Many people try to control life through sheer intensity. They push, plan, insist, and attempt to engineer outcomes. Yet the harder they push, the more friction they create. Watts compared this to the struggle of trying to fall asleep. Effort blocks the very result we want. Consider how moisture slowly redistributes through different soil depths after rainfall. There is no force, only balance. This natural equilibrium shows why aggressive control fails. Forcing narrows perception. It tightens the mind until creative insight disappears. When we stop trying to overpower life, possibilities return. Ease supports clarity in ways tension never can. The shift from force to alignment marks the beginning of flow, harmony instead of control. The wisdom of flow is not passivity. It is intelligent cooperation with what is unfolding. When we align with reality, our actions become more effective, not less. They are grounded rather than frantic. Think of how forest understory adjusts its growth rate in response to gradual nutrient changes. It does not retreat or demand different conditions. It harmonizes with what is available. This harmony allows consistent growth with minimal strain. When we embody this principle, decision-making becomes clearer. We stop fighting battles that never needed to be fought. We choose actions based on what supports expansion rather than what satisfies fear. This harmony is the essence of Watts's message, the end of internal conflict. When resistance fades, internal conflict dissolves. Much of our anxiety comes from opposing the natural direction of life. We argue with reality and lose energy in the process. The moment we release the argument, clarity rises. Imagine the quiet settling of organic material as it integrates into new soil layers. There is no battle, there is only transition. When we approach our experiences with this same acceptance, tension loosens. We stop feeling threatened by change and begin to see its intelligence. Life becomes less about surviving each shift and more about learning from it. This internal peace strengthens our resilience. Flow as a state of trust. Flow emerges when we stop trying to control every detail. Trust grows when we see patterns rather than isolated events. Watts taught that we are not separate from the universe. We are expressions of the same process that shapes everything. Consider how sap rises through tree trunks in response to environmental conditions. This upward movement is not forced. It is a natural response to a wider system. In the same way, our actions become smoother when we align with life's direction. Trust grows through repeated experience of this alignment. Over time, we rely less on tension and more on intuitive cooperation. This is the heart of flow. Releasing the weight of identity. As we deepen in awareness, we notice how tightly we protect our self-image. We defend it even when it limits us. Watts encouraged letting this rigidity dissolve. Identity changes as naturally as forest rings form over time. Each ring reflects a season of growth rather than a fixed definition. When we accept this metaphor, we loosen our attachment to outdated stories about who we must be. This release does not weaken us. It grants space to evolve without fear. We learn to meet life with curiosity rather than rigidity. This freedom feels lighter than any defended identity. The space between reaction and choice. Flow develops through awareness, not force. When we pause before reacting, we regain agency. This pause reveals options that resistance keeps hidden. Consider the gradual thickening of forest mulch as seasons pass. The accumulation creates a soft layer that gives space for new growth. In the same way, the internal pause softens our reactivity. It gives room for wise response. We stop being driven by fear and begin choosing from clarity. This space transforms how we relate to difficulties. Challenges become teachers rather than threats. When change becomes a partner, a remarkable shift happens when change stops feeling hostile. We recognize it as part of a larger intelligence guiding our growth. Watts described this as joining the dance rather than resisting the rhythm. Imagine the slow redistribution of nutrients after fallen leaves break down. This process supports the next cycle without clinging to the previous one. When we see change in this way, we move with life instead of bracing against it. Obstacles turn into guidance. The future feels less like a threat and more like an unfolding path. Adapting without losing yourself. Adaptation does not mean becoming shapeless. It means moving in alignment with what matters most. Many people fear that changing direction means abandoning their identity. Yet identity grows through adjustment. Think of how forest roots extend toward new mineral deposits without losing their connection to the tree. The extension is part of the whole, not a contradiction of it. When we adapt, we expand our experience rather than erase it. We learn to move with opportunity rather than chasing rigid expectations. This adaptability builds a deeper form of confidence. The ease found in surrender. Surrender is often misunderstood as giving up. In truth, it is the release of pointless struggle. Watts taught that surrender is cooperation with reality. Consider the quiet settling of morning dew into forest soil. There is no resistance, only integration. This image reflects the nature of surrender. When we stop forcing outcomes, we see opportunities that tension hides. We allow life to guide us with more intelligence than fear can provide. Surrender becomes a source of ease, not weakness. The quiet strength of alignment. As resistance dissolves, a quiet strength emerges. This strength is not loud or aggressive. It is stable, grounded, and steady. Consider how forest soil compacts over years, forming layers capable of supporting immense growth. This strength develops through patience and consistency. When we align with life, our actions deepen rather than scatter. We stop wasting energy on battles we cannot win. We focus on what supports expansion. This alignment cultivates calm resilience. Becoming a participant in life. Watts taught that we are not separate from the flow of existence. When we release resistance, we shift from observer to participant. Life becomes a collaboration rather than a struggle. Imagine how forest clearings expand gradually after natural changes in light exposure. The clearing does not appear through force, it emerges through interaction. In the same way, our life evolves through partnership with circumstances. Participation brings a deep sense of belonging, trusting the direction of change. Trust grows when we recognize the intelligence within change itself. We see that each shift supports growth, even when it disrupts comfort. Think of how forest understory adjusts its composition as minerals redistribute. The adaptation is subtle, yet purposeful. When we trust change in this way, uncertainty loses its power to scare us. We begin to sense a wider rhythm. We find peace not by controlling the future, but by partnering with its unfolding, moving forward with clarity. The journey from resistance to flow is not about abandoning strength. It is about using strength wisely. Watts guided us toward a life where cooperation replaces struggle, where awareness replaces fear. Imagine the gradual enrichment of forest soil after cycles of renewal. Each cycle deepens its capacity for growth. In the same way, embracing change increases our capacity for clarity. As you move forward, let this perspective guide you. You do not need to fight every shift. You can meet each moment with steadiness and openness. If these reflections support your path, consider staying connected through future episodes. Your presence strengthens this community of thoughtful growth.